Alright, so, part 2 now. What's been going on recently is I've been finding that this book is very, very dense, so it's going to be probably parts that consist of shorter terms in the book. Right now it's just going to be chapters 10 through 14, which may indicate more parts. That's fine by me. I'm still enjoying it. So yeah, this is part 2 now, chapters 10 through 14, including 14, and just get right into it. Again, this is Counterpoint by Aldous Huxley. And yeah, here we go. Chapter 10 opens up with Spandrel and Rampion discussing. Make sure you get the right words. Discussing. Okay, now how Spandrel is kind of introduced as a character right off the bat is he is describing to Rampion how he coerces women into sex. How does he make his how does he make his mark? How does he then convince them to actually do it with him? Which usually involves a lot of manipulation of their emotions, making sure they're kind of, not doing too well and all that kind of way. Also, he really admits to doing everything just short of raping them, and even just short is like he is just barely not raping them, which is horrible. But of course, for the time and for the place and for all that, may have been looked more better on. But still, anyway, it's really creepy how he does it. And for this, obviously, Rampion very much dislikes Spandrel. He thinks that Spandrel just wastes his time doing nothing but chasing after women, doing whatever he actually wants, which is a big point to be made with Spandrel, and also connects him with Lucy and why they spend so much time together. Now, one thing about Rampion in his criticism of Spandrel, even Rampion's own wife accuses Rampion of being a Puritan, but Rampion retorts, no, this is not being a Puritan, this is just being sane. This is just being a normal, actual, caring human being. And it's so funny to see Rampion's such a passionate about the subject, even though he's not necessarily even partaking in the same way that Spandrel is. And Rampion also, one big thing that Rampion goes through to describe is phallism, phallic, having to do with men genitalia. What he really means, and what I think he really means anyway, is that it's a worship of the physical, what a man really wants, and not necessarily going into any kind of spiritual or intellectual aspect of it. It's all just what feels good. I want this, so go do this. I got my little pointer stick showing me the direction to go. Yep, that's a sexual joke. So I'm going to follow it. I'm just going to stick it in whatever. And it's just, he just thinks it's so vulgar that that's become such a high model of direction that is so followed. And honestly, I quite agree with him, and it's pretty horrible. And for that reason, Rampion ends up with the chapter not liking Spandrel at all, in any way, shape, or form. So, which honestly, I don't like Spandrel at this point, especially anyway. I think later on, and we'll see later on in this chapter, not later on in this chapter, but in the following chapters, that Spandrel actually has some kind of decent remarks about the world around him. He spent a lot of time thinking, that's for sure, whether or not it's actually for any kind of benefit or whether or not it actually is any kind of intellectual thought. Even it's thinking, and it's a point of view, and it's fairly interesting, the point of view. So we'll go on and we'll see what else he has to say about that. Moving on to chapter 11 now, we are introduced to Lucy, who is sitting around bored. By the way, all of this is happening after the party. We've already gone past the party. We went past the party. The party was actually still taking place in the last chapter, but now we're beyond it later on. It is described now, Lucy is always bored. She's always looking to be fulfilled in some way, even though it's not really clear as to how she's even wanting to be fulfilled. This fulfillment, though, she always seeks out in the way of physical. Again, it's kind of the phallism that Rampion talked about before, but her being a woman, it's not it's just the physical. She just goes after what she sees and can touch and can feel. and never anything about that, anything deeper, like an emotional or spiritual or even intellectual kind of pursuit. It's all about what makes her feel good. It's she in doing this, she spends a lot of time with men who are being educated. Men who are being educated, though, in the ways of history, in the ways of just literature. And in that, it is described by Rampion in the previous chapter, and then later in this chapter too, that there's a big difference between the experienced and the what is learned and the theory and all that. It's not Rampion, it's Spandrel. Spandrel expands on that later in this chapter, but we'll get to it. While she's hanging out with all these men, Walter's thrown in there too. And Walter's listening to all this, Walter's hearing all this. He's too quiet to say anything or go against them. But Lucy, in her way, is making comments against them and sometimes making them kind of uncomfortable, but they always have some sort of response in something foreign language or something like that. One of them is actually only studying Assyrian history. What good that's going to come of him, I don't know. I can't see. But hey, that's what he wanted, so whatever. But there's a lot of criticism for him doing that, obviously so, and understandably so, because it's just so. I don't want to say useless, but it's not something that's practical. It's not something that gives you a lot of experience in the real world and understanding other people in the current day that you live. Maybe understanding past people of that culture or even current people of that culture, but he's not around anybody of that culture. So it's very interesting to see the complexities of what he has taught with what he's saying and then how others respond to him. And most of the time, it's pretty negative. How people respond to him. It's like, okay, you're going on your thing. No one cares. You're not saying anything that means anything. So, yeah. Later on in the chapter, we go ahead and move on to a scene with Beatrice and Burlap. Now, Beatrice is a woman that Burlap is currently seeing. We're introduced to her by a couple of the young men previously, just a few lines before, who was talking about how she's very cruel because she doesn't give in to their desires, but she still speaks with them and hangs out with them and does all this kind of stuff. But she was actually living with one of them. He was boarding with her, so it wasn't like it was a relationship. It was just he was living in a room that she had. But she kicked him out, so maybe him saying these things about her is more just about feeling pretty salty about her kicking him out. Anyway, it goes on to her, and she has a relationship with Burlap. And Burlap, was the guy we were introduced before in the previous chapters before about he's very down, he's very sad, very upset. But he runs editor of a newspaper that Walter works at. And it dives into Burlap's relationship with Beatrice and how Beatrice is like the motherly figure that he is after. Because he, all of his relationships, including the wife that he lost, that is revealed that had died while married to him, was very much a motherly figure. And even their sexual encounters is described as him having an Oedipus complex with his wife. And it's like, that's not your actual mom. How do you have an Oedipus complex? But it's because he married basically the woman who epitomized his mom in his eyes and took care of him like a mother. And so all of his sexual and non-sexual even relationships with women he gets women who absolutely adore and have just fallen for how amazing he seems. And he does it through big, flamboyant, life is amazing, let's do life. Kind of sounds like the douchebag with the guitar in college, who's like playing, he writes his own songs, and it's just, they don't, because he hasn't experienced or he's not willing to actually open up or try to learn about the world around him. He's just big on, there's nothing wrong with playing the guitar or writing your own music like that, but it's when you present it to people like you're better than them or like something, you're trying to share it with them, that's when I at least start to have a problem with them. It gets a little, it's like, well, do you really know? And then you do it in a medium like a newspaper where you control the responses and that are shown, in which you only pick out responses that you agree with, and you can censor off any kind of critical or just criticism against you, which the douchebag with the guitar is never good on criticism either. But anyway, that's Burlap and Beatrice now. Beatrice isn't really shown up too much more in this entire section, actually, not just this chapter, but this entire section. It goes on later into now Lord Edward. Just a close glimpse. It's actually more of a comedic thing than anything else. I really don't know how much it describes, except for that Edward is pure scientific, not really religious believing, and neither is his assistant, Illage. I hope I pronounced that right, Illage. Because it has Lord Edward having a phone call with his brother, who his brother proves God's existence. Because when you divide m being any real number, or just any number, I guess, you divide that by 0, the answer is infinity. Well, you then simplify the fraction by multiplying by 0. To do that, you have to multiply to the opposite side. So you have m equals infinity times 0. That then proves that something can be created from an infinite God or an infinite being from nothing, using nothing. It's like, what's the whole idea of God is an infinite God, created the world and the universe and everything out of nothing. And it's just more of a comedic. It's a mathematical explanation as to how God can exist. And it's like, well, yeah, math is good at describing the world, but math is an observation of the world. It's not something that creates the world. It's a tool to be used to not misshape, but shape the world and build, but not create anything. Creation is not a thing that it can do. It can describe, it can build, it can refashion, it can remold, but it can't create. And it's just kind of a funny thing. And it goes on to describe Edward and his even in this, he's still very old-fashioned, and it describes this with a story that Lucy shares with Walter and her friends about a conservatory. It introduces the conservatory story, and it's really funny because Lucy's talking about her dad calls her up to his room to have a stern talk with her, and what he says to her is, "I have heard from people that you are kissing and holding hands with gentlemen in the conservatory." And obviously Lucy and all of her friends are laughing because she's not even a virgin at this point yet. It's just, she's gone well and above and beyond anything that he is trying to accuse her of or has heard rumors of, and this is his only possible way of dealing with it because he just doesn't understand youthfulness and the feeling and the passion that can go on through youthfulness and how far kids actually. He's like the out of touch parent, who doesn't realize what their kids are actually into, while trying to warn them not to start to get into this, even though obviously they have. Skip completely to a different, unrelated section. We go to John Biddlake. And John Biddlake is arriving home, and he's arriving home alone. It's very late at night after the party again. Same night, though. Same kind of night, evening-ish, I think. Pretty sure. Correct me if I'm wrong. And he reaches his study where his art that he's kept for himself is collected and left. And he sees on the counter, or the table that's left there for him, food and drinks, as like milk or water or something like that. I can't remember exactly, from his servants. But on that also is reviews of his paintings, his most recent gallery of paintings that he's released. And one of them is very good, one of them is very bad. And the very good one describes him as a legend of the art world, as he sees as the final death throes of his career coming to a close, because they now see him as a veteran and a legend and no longer the new it thing. He's just that old guy still hanging out. And the bad one is the honest one, or what he feels like is the honest one, that tells him he's terrible and all this stuff. But he's like, no, it can't be true because I was so good and awesome. And which he was brilliant. And it's described that he was brilliant, everyone loved him, and he could really capture everything he was trying to capture and describe it very well. But one thing that he this really seems the connection with me is whenever I look at a movie that I'm getting ready to watch, or a game I want to play, or sometimes I actually read book reviews before books. I tend to read books based more on the summary and the author more than any kind of review, because book reviews are especially harsh. They tend to be. Especially for my unintellectual mind. It's like, well, this book is blowing my mind. Well, some people would probably think this is trivial and stupid, but hey, I like it, so whatever. Anyway, a lot of movie reviewers will be very unreasonably harsh, as well as game reviewers, and you always wonder why. And then sometimes they give him too much praise. It's like, well, why aren't you realistic? Why aren't you like, yeah, it's all right, I enjoyed it, but it's not, it's so, the review spectrum is so polarizing on either ways. And I love how this could be seen back in 1928 when Huxley wrote this book, or published this book, how he's like, yeah, critics suck, because no critics are like, very few are objective. They're like, yeah, these are the good things, these are the bad things. They always have to be, it's either complete garbage or it's absolutely amazing, the best thing ever, 10 out of 10, whatever. And the whole number system isn't even discussed in this, and I won't discuss it further. I hate the number system for rating anything. But I just thought it was kind of cool, the connection between stuff I see now and stuff from the book, Very stupid basic connection. But still, it's nice. But in this, he also reflects on in the past and what made him brilliant and his journey that he went along and everything. And it looks at his first wife, who he enjoyed the passion and the physical throes, and he loved the fights that they had as long as they got to make up. The making up was his favorite part about the fights, and it was okay. That's probably not a healthy relationship, but she was the mother of his first son, who actually died very young in California. Very interesting. Whenever Huxley references America in his books, I just like it. I don't know why. He's a very British author, but to relate America into his books, it's just, I don't know. I just like it. I'm American. We're the best. Anyway, and then it goes on to his second wife that he tries not to think about, because he very much did deeply love her, and she died after only 2 years of being married to him. He said those were the best 2 years of his life, so he tries not to reminisce because it's very painful and everything. And it's like, well, maybe you should think about it. Maybe you should try to get over that loss and try to move on and try to be happy. I mean, you're now in your 60s, dude, and this was when you were 24, 26 when this happened. Of course, I've never lost someone like that in my life, Very funny connection, young and old, young annoying the old. Polly Logan, only in there for this, I think it's page and a half, maybe 2-3 pages that she's in, complaining to her mother about something she said at the party, worried that it'll discredit her and ruin her reputation and everything, and her mom's just like, oh my gosh, I do not care. And it's really funny to see this, because she's like, mother, calling for her mom, and her mom's like, what's the big deal, what's wrong, and she's like, I said something. What did you say? It was really bad. It was to someone really important. And her mom's like, be your own person. Who cares? Go on. I'm sure it'll be fine. And then her mother just dismisses her. And that's how chapter 11 ends. And I just thought that was really funny, the connection between the young annoying the old, which is something that happens quite a bit in this book. I really, you know what? I don't even know how old Huxley was when he wrote this book. I wonder if he fits in the old or the young, or if he's in the middle, and they both annoy the heck out of him. But anyway, I just thought that was kind of funny. I thought that was kind of interesting and cool. But yeah, that does it for chapter 11. Moving right along to chapter 12. Scratch that. Chapter 12 not coming in this part. I just realized that this video is 18 minutes long. That is way too freaking long to put in any other kind of content. So chapter 12, 13, and 14. Why could I not count those? Why was I unable to... Anyway, those 3 will be done in the next part, along with maybe chapter 15. We'll see how this goes. If you haven't noticed, I'm recording these in chunks of chapter and then welding those 2 together. Previous chapter was 14 minutes. Did not expect that. This is a longer chapter. Chapter before that was only 4.5 maybe. But yeah, so we're going to do this a little different. I'm just going to do them by chapter. I'm going to record them by chapter. I'm going to scrunch them together. That's how it's going to be. Anybody, this is, again, I'm talking to anybody who's actually watching this. Nobody is. I looked at the numbers. Whatever. It's fun. Shut up. I'm really sorry. That was rude. See ya. Pause.